The mean vase shattered against the far wall, exploding into 1,000 shards of blue and white porcelain. The sound was like a gunshot, echoing through the penthouse suite that hovered 50 stories above the glowing streets of Seoul. "Get out! All of you! Get the hell out!" Minho's voice was a raw, guttural tear in his throat. He sat in the sleek titanium wheelchair, his chest heaving, sweat matting his dark hair against his forehead. His knuckles were white as he gripped the armrests, the only part of his body he could still command with full force. Below the waist, he was a statue, dead weight, a broken king on a throne of wheels. 3 nurses in crisp white uniforms scrambled toward the heavy oak doors, terrified. They didn't look back. They didn't apologize. They just ran. They had been paid handsomely to care for the heir to the Hanwell Group, but no amount of money was worth the wrath of a man who had lost everything. Minho watched them go, his breathing ragged. Good. Let them leave. Let the whole world leave. He reached for a glass of water on the side table, his hand trembling with a mixture of rage and fatigue. His fingers brushed the glass, but a spasm shot through his arm, knocking it over. It fell, splashing water over his useless legs before shattering on the marble floor. He screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated frustration, and swept the rest of the table's contents onto the floor. A tablet, a bottle of pills, a framed photo of a life that no longer existed. "Are you finished?" The voice was soft, distinct, and calm. It cut through the chaotic noise of Minho's tantrum like a warm knife through cold butter. Minho froze. He turned his head slowly, his eyes narrowing. Standing in the doorway of the kitchen was the new hire. The agency had sent her this morning. She was tall, with skin the color of deep, rich mahogany and hair braided neatly back from a face that held no fear. She wore the standard white uniform, but unlike the others, she wasn't running. She was leaning against the door frame, arms crossed, watching him. "I said get out," Minho hissed, his English perfect but laced with venom. "I heard you," she said, stepping over a shard of the main vase. "But my shift doesn't end for another 8 hours. And look at this mess. If I leave now, who's going to clean it up? You?" Minho stared at her, stunned into a momentary silence. No one spoke to him like that. Before the accident, he was a god in this city. After the accident, he was a fragile doll that everyone tiptoed around. "Do you know who I am?" he whispered dangerously. "I know your name is Minho," she said, crouching down to pick up the pill bottle. "And I know you are currently throwing a tantrum because you can't feel your legs. My name is Rose, and I don't run." Rose stood up, placing the bottle on a shelf out of his reach. Her accent was thick, lyrical, carrying the rhythms of her home in West Africa, a stark contrast to the sterile, sharp tones of Seoul. "I will have you fired," Minho spat. "I will make sure you never work in this country again." Rose didn't flinch. She grabbed a broom and dustpan from the closet. "You can try, but from what I saw in the hallway, you just chased away the last 3 nurses who were willing to put up with your screaming. So, until you find someone else, you're stuck with me." Minho gripped the armrests until his hands shook. He wanted to throw something at her. He wanted to break her calm facade. But before he could speak, the front door chimed. The heavy doors swung open. Minho's heart hammered against his ribs. He knew that cadence of footsteps. High heels, sharp, purposeful, rhythmic. Ji-yoon walked in. She was breathtaking, dressed in a white Chanel suit that cost more than Rose's likely annual salary. She was the woman Minho was supposed to marry in 3 months. She was the love of his life. Or she had been. "Ji-yoon," Minho said, his voice instantly losing its edge, replaced by a desperate softness. "You came." Ji-yoon stopped 10 feet away from him. She didn't come closer to kiss him. She didn't rush to his side. She looked at the shattered vase, then at the water soaking his pants, and finally at Rose, who was quietly sweeping in the corner. Ji-yoon's lip curled in distaste. "It smells like sickness in here, Minho," she said. Her voice was cold, devoid of the warmth he remembered. I had an accident with the water, Minho stammered, hating himself for explaining. Ji-yoon, why haven't you answered my calls? The doctors say the swelling is going down. There's a chance. There is no chance, Minho, she interrupted. She reached into her purse. I spoke to your father and your stepmother. Minho went still. And? And the board has made a decision. You can't run Hanwell from a chair. Your brother, Taesung, is taking over as CEO effective tomorrow. The words hit him harder than the car, crash that had severed his spine. Taesung? He's an idiot. He'll bankrupt the company in a year, and my father agreed to this? Your father is pragmatic, Ji-yoon said. She pulled a velvet box from her purse. And so am I. Minho stared at the box. It was the ring, the engagement ring, a rare pink diamond he had spent months sourcing. She walked forward, but she didn't hand it to him. She placed it on the small table Rose had just cleared. We can't get married, Minho. Not like this. I need a husband who can walk beside me at galas. Someone who can provide heirs. Someone whole. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Rose stopped sweeping. She stood up straight, her dark eyes fixed on Ji-yoon with an intensity that could burn steel. I'm still the same man, Minho whispered, tears of humiliation stinging his eyes. No, Ji-yoon said, turning her back on him. You're a liability. She walked toward the door. Just before she left, she turned to Rose. Don't get too comfortable, nurse. The family's cutting his personal allowance. I doubt he'll be able to pay you by the end of the week. With that, she was gone. The click of her heels faded down the hallway. Minho sat there, destroyed. The pain in his heart was so acute he wished he could feel the physical pain in his legs instead. He was alone. His father had replaced him. His brother had usurped him. His fiancée had discarded him like a broken toy. He dropped his head into his hands. A low, wretched sob escaped him. He waited for the sound of the door opening again. He waited for Rose to leave. Ji-yoon had said the money was gone. Why would this stranger stay? He heard footsteps, soft, rubber-soled shoes approaching him. He didn't look up. He couldn't bear to see the pity in her eyes before she quit. Go, he croaked. Just go, Rose. There's no money. You heard her. He felt a hand on his shoulder. It wasn't tentative. It was firm, heavy, and warm. I heard a lot of foolishness just now, Rose said quietly. But where I come from, we don't kick a man when he is down, and we certainly don't leave him hungry. Minho looked up, his eyes red and swollen. Rose wasn't looking at the door. She was looking at him, her expression unreadable but grounded. You're staying? He asked, disbelief coloring his tone. I have nowhere else to be tonight, Rose said, withdrawing her hand. And you are sitting in wet trousers. It is undignified for a man of your stature. Let's get you changed. Why? Minho asked, his voice cracking. Why would you help me? Rose looked at the engagement ring sitting on the table, cold and sparkling under the lights. Because, she whispered, a flash of old pain crossing her face, I know what it looks like when the vultures start circling, and I hate vultures. She moved behind his wheelchair and unlocked the brakes. But that wasn't the worst part, she murmured, almost to herself. What? Minho asked. Nothing, Rose said, pushing him toward the bedroom. Let's get you dry. Then we prepare for war. Minho didn't know it then, as he let this stranger wheel him into his bathroom, but the woman pushing his chair was the only shield he had left. He thought losing his legs was the end, but the real darkness was just walking through the door. The family hadn't just cut his funds. They had cut his lifeline, and night was falling fast. The penthouse, usually a beacon of light in the Seoul skyline, was dim. 3 days had passed since Ji-yoon walked out. 2 days since the Hanwell Group corporate credit cards were declined. 1 day since the electricity was throttled to emergency power only by the building management. A passive-aggressive move orchestrated, Minho was sure, by his stepmother. The heating was off. The chill of the Korean autumn was seeping through the floor-to-ceiling glass windows. Minho lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. He hadn't spoken since the lights dimmed. He felt like a ghost haunting his own grave. The humiliation of being cold in his own home, a home worth millions, was a new kind of torture. The door to his bedroom creaked open. "I made soup," Rose announced. Minho didn't turn his head. "I'm not hungry." "I didn't ask if you were hungry. I said I made soup." Rose walked in, carrying a tray. A candle flickered on it, one of the decorative scented ones she had found in the bathroom. The smell of lavender mixed strangely with the savory, spicy aroma rising from the bowl. "It is not Korean soup," she warned, setting the tray on the bedside table. "I used what was left in the pantry: rice, tomato paste, some spices I carry in my bag, and the chicken that was going to spoil in the fridge. It is jollof rice, but soup version, improvised." Minho looked at the reddish broth. "I told you I can't pay you. Why are you still here, Rose? The agency must have called you back by now." "They did," Rose said, sitting in the chair next to him. She adjusted the blanket over his chest. "I told them I cannot leave a patient in critical condition." "I'm not critical," Minho muttered. "I'm just paralyzed." "A man who refuses to eat is critical," she countered. She dipped the spoon into the broth. "Open." Minho glared at her. "I am 30 years old. I am the CEO of—" He stopped. He wasn't the CEO anymore. "I can feed myself." "Then do it." She held the spoon out. Minho's arm felt like lead. The depression was a physical weight, heavier than the paralysis. He lifted his hand, his fingers trembling. He took the spoon, but his grip was weak. The spicy red liquid sloshed over the side, staining the white sheets. He dropped the spoon. "I can't." The words were a whisper of defeat. Rose didn't scold him. She didn't sigh. She picked up the spoon, wiped the spill with a napkin, and dipped it again. "In my village," Rose said softly, bringing the spoon to his lips, "when a hunter is injured by a lion, the village does not mock him for not being able to walk. They carry him until he heals. Open." Minho opened his mouth. The taste was an explosion, spicy, rich, warming him from the inside out. It was completely foreign, unlike the subtle flavors of the palace cuisine he grew up on. It tasted like life. He ate the whole bowl. For the next week, a silent routine formed. Rose became a master of improvisation. She washed his clothes in the bathtub because the laundry service was canceled. She argued with the building manager until he turned the heat back on, threatening to go to the press about them freezing a disabled man to death. But the silence between them was thick with Minho's bitterness. He refused to do his physical therapy exercises. What was the point? Then the elevator chimed. It was the first visitor in 10 days. Minho was in the living room, staring out at the city he used to own. Rose was in the kitchen, boiling water. Well, look at the king." Minho spun his chair around. Taesung stood there, his stepbrother. He was wearing a suit Minho recognized. It was from Minho's own tailor. He looked taller, broader, fueled by his new power. "Taesung," Minho said, his voice raspy. "You look terrible, Hyung." Taesung laughed, walking around the room, picking up objects and sneering. "Dark in here. Father cut the budget, huh? He said you need to learn humility." "What do you want?" Minho gripped the wheels. "I need a signature," Taesung said, tossing a thick document onto Minho's lap. "Relinquishment of your remaining voting shares. The board is nervous. They think you might try to sue from your wheelchair. We need to calm them down." Minho looked at the papers. "These are my shares. My mother left them to me." "Your mother is dead," Taesung said coldly. "And you are as good as dead. Sign it, Minho. If you sign, I'll tell Father to turn the electricity back on fully. Maybe even send you a nurse who isn't—" Taesung looked toward the kitchen where Rose was standing, watching. "Some cheap help," Rose walked into the room. She held the kettle in her hand. The steam rose around her like a halo of anger. "I am not cheap," Rose said, her voice low and dangerous. "And he is not signing anything." Taesung laughed. "Excuse me? Who is this? The maid? Don't speak to me." He turned back to Minho, leaning in close, invading his space. He poked Minho in the chest. "Sign it, or I swear, Minho, I will have you moved to a state facility. You'll rot in a room with 4 other cripples." Minho trembled. The fear of being institutionalized, of being stripped of his last dignity, was paralyzing. He reached for the pen Taesung offered. "No," Rose said. She moved fast. She slammed the hot kettle down on the coaster with a bang that made Taesung jump. She snatched the papers from Minho's lap. "Hey!" Taesung shouted, reaching for her. "Give that back!" Rose stepped back, her eyes blazing. She towered over. Taesung, not in height, but in sheer presence. "You threaten a man who cannot stand?" Rose asked, her voice rising. "You come into his home, you mock his pain, and you try to steal his birthright? You are a small, small man." "I will have you arrested!" Taesung screamed, his face turning red. "Give me the papers." "Come and take them," Rose challenged. She held them near the candle flame she had lit earlier. "Take one step, and I burn them, all of them." Taesung froze. He looked at the flame, then at Rose's resolute face. He looked at Minho, who was staring at Rose with wide, shocked eyes. "You're crazy," Taesung muttered. "I am loyal," Rose corrected. "Something you know nothing about. Now get out, before I call the police and tell them you are trespassing and threatening a vulnerable patient." Taesung sneered, straightening his jacket. "Fine. Keep the papers. They're useless anyway. We'll just dilute your shares until they're worth dust. You'll beg me to buy them later." He turned to Minho. "Enjoy the darkness, brother. It's all you have left." Taesung stormed out. The elevator doors closed. The room fell silent. Rose blew out the candle near the papers. Her hands were shaking. Minho looked at her. Really looked at her. He saw the fraying hem of her uniform. He saw the fatigue under her eyes. She was fighting a war that wasn't hers, against enemies she didn't know. "Why?" Minho asked again, softer this time. "He could destroy you." Rose turned to him. She placed the papers back on his lap, smoothing out the wrinkles. "My father was a chief in our village," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "He was paralyzed in a mining accident. My uncles took everything. They threw us out. I watched him die of a broken heart because he felt he couldn't protect us." She knelt beside Minho's chair, bringing her face level with his. Her brown eyes were pools of liquid obsidian. "I promised myself," she whispered, "that if I ever saw that happen again, I would be the wall that does not break. You are not just a billionaire to me, Minho. You are a man, and as long as I am here, they do not win." Minho felt a crack in the ice that had encased his heart. He reached out, his hand shaking, and placed it on top of hers. Her skin was warm. "Rose," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I thank you." "Don't thank me yet." She stood up, brushing off her knees. "Because now we have to work. If you want to beat them, you have to get strong. No more pity. Tomorrow we start therapy. Real therapy. And it is going to hurt." Minho nodded. For the first time since the crash, he felt a flicker of something dangerous. Hope. But Rose didn't know that signing those papers, or refusing to, would trigger a chain reaction. Taesung wasn't just going to dilute shares. He was going to ensure Minho never spoke again. The silent war had just turned loud. Pain was the only reality Minho knew for the next 3 weeks. Rose was relentless. She wasn't just a nurse. She was a drill sergeant. She had constructed a makeshift gym in the living room using heavy books, water jugs, and resistance bands she had bought with her own money. "Push!" Rose commanded, holding Minho's leg up. Focus on the muscle. Visualize the nerve connecting. The wire is cut, Minho, but the signal is still there. Find it. Minho gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face. It's nothing. I feel nothing. Liar, Rose shouted. Your toe twitched yesterday. I saw it. Do it again. Minho screamed in frustration, squeezing his eyes shut. He focused all his energy, all his rage at Taesung, all his hatred for Ji-yoon, into his right big toe. Move, move, damn you. A spark, a microscopic fire in the void of his lower body. There, Rose gasped, dropping his leg gently. Did you feel that? Minho panted, his chest heaving. He looked at her, his eyes wide. It felt like a pinprick, like fire. Rose beamed. Her smile transformed her face, making her look 10 years younger. She grabbed his face in her hands and kissed his forehead. We are winning, Minho. We are winning. Minho froze at the contact. Her lips were soft. The smell of cocoa butter and lavender overwhelmed him. For a moment, he wasn't the paralyzed billionaire. He was just a man, and she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. She pulled back, looking flustered. Sorry, I got excited. Don't be, Minho said, his voice husky. Do it again. Rose looked at him, surprised. The tension in the room shifted. It wasn't patient and nurse anymore. It was two survivors clinging to a raft in a storm. But the moment was shattered by the buzzing of a phone, not Minho's main phone, that had been monitored by the family. It was a cheap burner phone Rose had bought him. Minho answered it. It was Mr. Park, the only board member still loyal to his father's original vision. Sir, Mr. Park whispered, you need to move. Tonight. What? Why? Minho asked, sitting up straighter. Taesung found out about the offshore accounts, the ones your mother set up for you. He knows you're using them to buy up the diluted shares through shell companies. He knows you're plotting a takeover. Let him know, Minho snarled. I own 51% now. I'm ready to come back. No, sir, you don't understand. Mr. Park's voice was trembling. He's not planning a legal battle. He's planning a removal. I heard him talking to the head of security. They're coming to the penthouse. They're going to claim you are mentally unstable and that your nurse is abusing you. They have faked medical reports. Minho's blood ran cold. When? Now. They are in the elevator. Minho dropped the phone. Rose! Rose looked up from where she was packing the weights. What? We have to leave. Now. They're coming to frame you. They're coming to take me away. Rose didn't ask questions. She sprang into action. She grabbed a backpack and started shoving essential medicines, the hard drive with the financial data, and a jacket for Minho into it. The service elevator, she said. It opens with a key card I have. Minho spun his chair toward the back exit. Hurry! The front doors exploded open. 3 men in black suits burst in. Behind them was Taesung, grinning like a shark. Going somewhere, brother? Taesung sneered. Rose stepped in front of Minho, shielding him. You have no right to be here. I have every right, Taesung said, holding up a piece of paper. Emergency guardianship order, signed by a judge 10 minutes ago. Minho is mentally incompetent, and you, he pointed a finger at Rose, are under arrest for elder abuse and theft. That's a lie, Minho shouted, trying to wheel himself forward, but one of the guards kicked the wheel of his chair, spinning him around. Restrain her, Taesung commanded. 2 guards lunged at Rose. She fought. She was strong, fueled by a lifetime of resilience. She landed a slap across one guard's face that echoed through the room. She kicked another in the shin. Run, Minho! She screamed. Get to the lift! But Minho couldn't run. He watched in horror as the men tackled Rose to the ground. They twisted her arms behind her back. One of them pressed her face into the marble floor. No! Minho roared. He threw himself out of the chair, dragging his body across the floor toward her. Leave her alone! Take me! Leave her alone! Taesung walked over to Minho, who was crawling on the floor, and placed a polished shoe on Minho's hand, crushing it. Minho cried out, "Look at you!" Taesung spat. "Crawling like a bug, and you think you can run a company?" He signaled to the guards. "Take the woman to the police station. Tell them we found her stealing jewelry. Plant the diamond ring in her pocket." "You monster!" Minho screamed. Rose lifted her head. Her lip was bleeding. Her eyes met Minho's. "Don't give up," she mouthed. "Fight!" The guards hauled her up and dragged her out. Her eyes never left Minho's until the doors closed. Minho was left lying on the floor, his hand throbbing, his heart shattered. Taesung crouched down beside him. "Tomorrow is the shareholder meeting," Taesung whispered. "I'm going to announce that you have been committed to a psychiatric facility. You will never see the sun again, and that African girl will rot in a Korean prison. She doesn't speak the language of the law here, Minho. She's finished." Taesung stood up and walked to the door. "Clean him up," he told the remaining guard. "Lock him in his room." Minho lay there in the silence. The pain loop had closed. He had found hope, and it had been ripped away. But as he stared at the spot where Rose had been tackled, something shifted in his soul. The despair evaporated, replaced by a cold, metallic fury. He focused on his legs. The pinprick of fire. They thought removing Rose would break him. They thought he was helpless without her. But they had made a fatal error. They had taken the only thing in the world he loved, and they had just awakened a monster. Minho closed his eyes. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He began to drag himself, inch by agonizing inch, not toward his bed, but toward the hidden safe in the floor that Taesung didn't know existed. The grand ballroom of the Hanwell Hotel was glittering with crystal chandeliers and the flashing cameras of the press. The annual shareholder meeting was the event of the season. Taesung stood at the podium, looking every bit the victor. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the rising stock prices, artificially inflated, of course. "Ladies and gentlemen," Taesung said, his voice smooth, "it is with a heavy heart that I must address the rumors regarding my brother, Minho. Due to the severe trauma of his accident, his mental state has deteriorated. He has been placed in a private care facility for his own safety." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ji-yoon, sitting in the front row, dabbed at dry eyes with a handkerchief. She looked beautiful and tragic, the grieving fiancé. "Therefore," Taesung continued, "I am accepting the position of permanent chairman of Hanwell Group. We must move forward." "Objection." The voice was amplified, booming through the speakers, but it didn't come from the podium. The double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open with a hydraulic hiss. Every head turned. The cameras flashed in a blinding wave. Minho sat in his wheelchair at the entrance. But he wasn't wearing pajamas. He was wearing a bespoke black suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. His hair was slicked back. He was shaved. He looked dangerous. And he wasn't alone. Pushing his wheelchair was a woman in a stunning emerald green evening gown. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo. Her dark skin glowed under the lights. It was Rose. A collective gasp went through the room. Taesung gripped the podium, his face draining of color. "Security, remove them." "Stand down," Minho commanded. His voice wasn't raspy anymore. It was the voice of a CEO. "I am still the majority shareholder. If anyone touches me, they will be fired and sued into oblivion." The security guards hesitated, then stepped back. Minho signaled Rose. She pushed him down the center aisle. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Ji-yoon stared, her mouth slightly open. Rose pushed him right up to the stage. She locked the brakes. Then she handed Minho a microphone. "My brother says I am mentally unstable," Minho said, his eyes locking on Taesung. "He says I am unfit, but I think the only thing unfit here is his accounting." Minho pressed a button on a remote he held in his lap. The screen behind Taesung flickered. The stock chart disappeared, replaced by documents, bank transfers, emails, surveillance footage of Taesung bribing the doctors to fake the medical reports. "This," Minho said, pointing to the screen, is proof of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. The room erupted. Flashbulbs went off like a strobe light. You, you can't prove that, Taesung stammered. And that woman, she's a criminal. She escaped custody. She was bailed out, Minho said calmly. By me. And all charges were dropped an hour ago when I presented the police with the video footage from my penthouse security system. The one you forgot to disable, brother. Minho looked at Rose. She smiled down at him. It was a smile of victory. But I have one more thing to demonstrate, Minho said, to prove that I am capable. He handed the microphone to Rose. The room went dead silent. Minho placed his hands on the armrests of his chair. He took a deep breath. He could feel the fire in his legs. It wasn't a lot. It was painful. It was trembling. But it was there. He pushed. His triceps bulged. His legs shook violently. He's trying to stand, someone whispered. Minho, don't! Ji-yoon cried out, standing up. You'll hurt yourself. Sit down, Ji-yoon, Rose said into the microphone. Her voice was cold steel. Minho gritted his teeth. A vein popped in his forehead. He channeled every ounce of rage, every spoonful of spicy soup, every moment Rose had held his hand. Slowly, agonizingly, he rose. He didn't stand tall. He was bent, trembling, supporting most of his weight on the podium. But his feet were planted on the floor. He was upright. He looked Taesung in the eye. They were face to face. Get out of my chair, Minho growled. Taesung stumbled back, terrified. He looked at the police officers who were now making their way toward the stage. He looked at the ruined screen. He ran. He bolted off the side of the stage, only to be intercepted by the officers at the exit. Minho collapsed back into his wheelchair, exhausted but triumphant. The room exploded into applause. A standing ovation. Ji-yoon rushed the stage. She pushed past Rose. Minho! Oh my God, Minho! I knew you could do it. I was so worried. She reached for his hand. Minho looked at her hand, then at her face. He saw the calculation in her eyes. The ring was gone from her finger. Don't touch me, he said quietly. Minho, baby, I was forced. Rose, Minho said, ignoring his ex-fiancée completely. Take me home. Rose stepped forward, physically blocking Ji-yoon. She didn't say a word. She just unlocked the brakes, turned the chair around, and began to push him back down the aisle. Ji-yoon was left standing on the stage, alone in the spotlight of her own greed. Outside, the cool night air hit them. The limo was waiting. Rose helped Minho into the car. She sat beside him. The adrenaline was fading, leaving them both quiet. You stood, Rose whispered, looking at him with awe. You actually stood. I had to, Minho said, leaning his head back. I couldn't let you wear that dress for nothing. Rose laughed, a rich, melodic sound that filled the car. It was expensive. Thank you for buying it. Thank you for saving my life, Minho said. He reached over and took her hand. This time, he didn't let go. He interlaced their fingers. The contrast of his pale skin against her dark skin was stark, beautiful. My family's gone, Minho said, looking out the window at the passing city lights. Taesung is going to prison. My father, he will be ruined by the scandal. I am alone. No, Rose squeezed his hand. You are not alone. You have a company to run. You have legs to heal. And she hesitated. And? Minho turned to her. And you have a nurse who needs a raise. Seoul is very expensive. Minho smiled. It was a genuine smile, one that reached his eyes. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. Rose, he said softly, I think we can negotiate a contract for life. The car sped into the night, carrying two people from different worlds who had found a common language in the silence of pain. They had lost everything to find each other. And as Minho looked at Rose, he knew that the paralysis was just the beginning of his walk toward the woman who had never let him fall. If you were Rose, Would you have forgiven Minho's family or destroyed them completely? Let me know in the comments below.